Hello all, how are you doing today on this stiflingly hot June day? I don't know how it is by you guys, but it is very hot here and I'm currently just staying inside to hide from the heat because I am not a hot weather person at all. But to do that, we get to talk about Hunter x Hunter chapter 357 instead, so I think that's a win, at least from my point of view. Regardless, this chapter is essentially the aftermath of the Chrollo versus Hisoka fight that we have been getting for the past couple of chapters, and they both live, which is kind of nice, because I think everybody was worried about one or the other, or possibly both, but there was no need apparently, and I think that that just in itself is pretty cool, because I love both of these characters, and so now neither one of their potentials for future development needs to be just, like, crushed. Not yet, anyway. I mean, of course, it's probably going to happen sometime along the way. But as happy as that is, this chapter, I think that in a word we could probably describe it as controversial. It has gotten very heated responses from some people, I would say, whether they love it or whether they hate it. It's strong emotions either way. But that's because basically the way by which Hisoka has ultimately ended up living is that he does live, but he died as well. So it's kind of both, and so he lives sort of by a little bit of a stretch of logic. That basically, because we now know for certain that Nen continues to exist beyond death, and in fact goes stronger, that before Hisoka died, he made a request of his Nen, I guess you could say, to basically expand and contract upon his death, to continue doing that, to make sure that he could restart his heart and lungs following death, which is exactly what happened. And I am of mixed opinion on this. I can sort of understand both why Togashi did it. I think that it's effectively in line with what we do understand about Nen, but there's no denying that it's a bit of a stretch of logic, but that I am personally willing to accept. I can understand why not everybody is quite happy about it. But essentially, I do believe that it is in line with what we know about Nen. We know that Nen can exist after death. That was definitely one of the essential concepts that we have been drilling into our minds these past couple of chapters through this Chrollo Hisoka fight. But it actually does have some prior precedent in Hunter x Hunter. Several commenters have pointed this out on the sort of more reaction-y video. We got quite a bit of good discussion on that video. I liked it. But I was initially concerned that simply because we haven't seen that much, I didn't remember seeing that much of the issue of Nen continuing on after death, that this is a little bit of a last-minute introduction for such a dramatic concept. But some people have pointed out that we've had the idea of residual Nen going on for quite some time. People have pointed out chapter 120, and another example was, actually, I think this is the best example, this was the most convincing to me, but how after Gon killed Pito, her Nen continued to live on, and it attacked Gon after she died. And that was, again, in a very, very dramatic circumstance. So I don't think that this is unprecedented, even though it kind of might feel that way a little bit. I think the real issue here, aside from a little nitpick that I'll talk about in a second, is that this is just a very strange concept. And so I think it's just, the real issue here is that Nen doesn't really know many limits other than the fact that we need to set a condition to strengthen it. And of course, actually, one does wonder whether a condition was forced upon Hisoka or whether he set something here that we don't really know about quite yet. Potential repercussions down the road, I don't know yet. I don't really know what that might be. But long story short, Nen can be used for pretty much anything, which is a potential problem for some depending on their own personal taste, and I think that this is just an example of Togashi really pushing those limits. Because there's no denying that the idea of Nen beyond death, the potential implications for the rest of the story, there's a lot. Now that we know for certain that it's been introduced several times actually, it does need to continue to be used, or this will feel out of place. Nen is undeniably an extremely overpowered magic system. It always has been. It's even more so now, and whether you are okay with that or not okay with that is a matter of personal taste, I think. On another note, my own personal nitpick is again brought up by one of the commenters on the previous video, But the question of whether or not simply restarting a heart or lungs can actually fully bring someone back to life. The question is whether this is sort of medically possible, because obviously following the stopping of the heart and lungs, there will be damage to other systems as well, because they're due to lack of oxygen, particularly the brain. And so I think it just actually depends on how long Hisoka actually was dead. I'm not a doctor, and so I don't really know how long these systems can survive without oxygen, about how long between death and damage to these systems. I don't really know the really time difference. But if Hisoka was only dead for a few minutes, I can see it feasible. If this was a few hours later, it would be problematic. But we don't really know the exact time frame in between Hisoka's death and Hisoka's resurrection, I guess you could say. At the end of the day, though, I think I'm pretty cool with it. It's a bit of a stretch, but it mostly adds up, I think. And it's just a personal opinion of mine when it comes to fiction, that you always need a certain degree of willingness to just go along with the author. If there are a lot of logic stretches, there's a big problem. But just one here or there, especially when they mostly work, you can criticize it, yes, in the moment, but I think it is better to move on instead of getting hung up on it for too long. But that's just me. That's how I like to approach stories, because I don't like to get too hung up on the little things. Especially when the little things aren't that big anyway. But, part 2, on to the next point. Now that Hisoka is back, he now has a new motivation. He's basically going spider hunting, I guess we could say. He has decided that he is going to whittle down the Phantom Troop one by one by one until they're all gone. And yes, that actually means that we got 2 deaths this chapter. Shalnark and Kortobi. Shocking, honestly. I did not see that coming from a mile away. I mean, I guess it does make sense that they were the first 2 targets, as they were nenless at the moment, and so they were the easiest to take down. And, of course, I wish I could have seen more of them. I really like Shalnark. I don't know that much about Kortobi. But, like, aside from the initial upset, of course, and the initial shock factor, which is naturally like, oh my gosh, what is happening, what is happening, what are you doing, Togashi? I don't really see why some people are so upset at this, or rather, why some people are not happy with Togashi because of it. Being upset at a character death for love of a character is one thing, and I have no right to criticize anyone for that. In fact, it's kind of sad. I'm gonna miss these guys, myself. But being upset at the author is another. I do think we always, whenever we're going through a piece of fiction, that we do need to keep that distance. This isn't real after all. None of these people exist. And another thing, several things that we need to remember with regards to this topic. It's just like, I think that most of the discussion of the whole spider killing thing is very just like, what are you doing to Hisoka? What are you doing to the Phantom Troop? What are you doing to these guys? And I don't really see many problems with it from a storytelling perspective, aside from the fact that it's just like, I would have liked to see more of these guys. But what we do really need to remember at the end of the day is that the members of the Phantom Troop, they are villains, likable and well-developed though they may be. That's not to say that Hisoka is justified in murdering them at all, but that it's also just kind of strange to see people saying, oh my babies, when talking about these people, you know? This is coming from someone who loves villain characters, but I don't know, I think it's a sign of very good writing that Togashi has gotten us to empathize with these characters to such a degree, but I don't know, there are limits, I guess. It's not like we've even just gotten very recently insight into their motivation or anything. For all we know about these characters is that they're essentially unrepentant for their actions, and they don't seem to have a good reason for what they're doing other than their loyalty to each other and to Crollo. And it's not even like we got like a sad backstory or something that could give us, oh, my baby is just for pity's sake. We don't even have that. But the real issue of the whole villain treatment thing right here is Hisoka. He is a very well-liked villain as well. And we all need to remember that it shouldn't be shocking to us for a villain to act really like a villain, to do really terrible things. Hisoka is a particularly difficult character because he is not always antagonistic. He has sided with the protagonist. He has helped the protagonists before. And of course, simply because he's so much fun, he's a very flamboyant, charismatic figure. He's fun. We like it when he is on screen. He's entertaining. But I do also think that it is very good at times for Togashi to remind us that he is in fact a terrible, terrible person who has no allegiance to anyone but himself. The only thing that he has ever been shown to care about is his own fun, and that fun happens to be fighting and killing people. He's not a nice guy, guys. But my question here is actually motivation for Hisoka. Like, we know that of course, the simple idea of fighting people, obviously, that's Hisoka. But Shalnark and Kortobi, because they had given their nen to Corolla, they couldn't really put up a fight at the moment, so I don't really think that Hisoka would have gotten that much fun out of killing them. So my question right now is just why? It's not a complaint, it's just I want to see more of his reasoning. Because, I mean, just like killing the spiders off in general might be a thrilling idea for him, but I'm just curious as to what he might be hoping to achieve. It might be nothing like usual, because part of the fun of Hisoka is that he doesn't have that much motivation. He kind of is just in it for the thrill of fighting and killing people, which is awful, of course, but it makes a fun character, you know? So, the question is it just the fun? Is it revenge for what Corolla did? Or is he maybe trying to pick another fight with Corolla by taking down his men first? I don't really know. I think that the only thing that's certain, honestly, right now, is that there is going to be a bloodbath in the near future. I don't really know what's coming next. I'm usually not that much of a theory maker, personally. I prefer to just, pick apart what I already have and sort of limit the theorizing to just questions. So it's what is this? What is this? What does this character mean? Blah, 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 blah. But I can ordinarily try and put together something, and I can't really do that right now. Because right now, it's just, we know that the Phantom Troop is heading to the Dark Continent, based for Corolla's phone call, and Hisoka is going to try and hunt them down one by one. And we are getting even more fracturing of this already very, very fractured expedition. And so, things are going to fall apart very, very quickly. And I'm honestly very excited to see what comes next, because this arc, over the course of the past few days, I've been really getting back into Hunter x Hunter a little bit more than I have been for the past couple of months. So I'm very excited. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. I would be happy to hear them. And thank you very much for watching. I'll see you soon.